This is week 2 with Goalhorns and Fight Songs. I'm your host, Wes, and my co host, Mike, joining me.
Evening, everyone.
So, there was actually games played this weekend. I don't know if you were able to watch any or follow any, but it's good to have actual college hockey back.
Yeah, absolutely. Not able to watch the game that I wanted to, but here in the cities, they had St. Cloud and St. Thomas, so I watched a little bit of their first game of the year on Friday night.
I saw a little bit, or some of the highlights from that one, I think. And then Western was at Ohio State on Saturday in just an exhibition game, so they only played the one game on the weekend. And there wasn't a stream or a radio broadcast for that one, so it was just kind of really just following Twitter and some live stat thing that I think Ohio State was running. So kind of disappointing on that regard, but at least again there was some college hockey to be played and something to pay attention to. So that was nice.
Yeah, UMD had the same thing, playing their exhibition game against Wisconsin, um, at a kind of a high school arena in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. So not quite set up to broadcast. Television. They didn't have a radio broadcast, so it was following Twitter and then reading the recaps online.
Uh, so as far as like the game went, from what I was able to tell, it looked like Western kind of picked up right where they left off. In the first period, they got out to a 1-0 lead on a power play goal by Ethan Frank, and Ethan's been one of those guys who's been able to score pretty regularly. He carried a lot of the offense last year, and if you give him a chance with extra space, he's going to make you pay for it. So to see him get on the board is good. And then they ended up giving up a goal in the second period, so it was 1-1 going into three. And then they had another senior who came back this year score a goal in Josh Basalt. He was assisted by Rhett Kingston and Dylan Hilson Dagger, who's a pretty young player, kind of. I think he's a third-year player, maybe. And then the last goal, which was 25 seconds later, was scored by Luke Geringer, who I believe is a sophomore, and his goal was unassisted. So definitely guys stepping up, taking advantage of the playing time against more than just their own guys at practice, which is always good. I think scrimmages and things like that, when you actually get other people out there, I think do a little bit more for the team than just kind of scrimmaging against your own guys all the time.
Yeah, it's good to see you getting against other competition, who steps up, who doesn't, because you can only do so much against your own teammates. You see them every day in practice. You kind of go through the monotony of everything. Um, and then to get into a real game against another team, that's good. Did
Yeah.
uh did Western play all of their goalies or just one?
They played just one. They played Bussy the whole game, which I think is good for him because he did miss so much of last year that I think getting him back to being comfortable between the net or between the pipes is something they wanted to look forward to in the preseason or in the exhibition game. And then I think I think they had a higher number of players they were able to use. So going into this week of actual hockey, they'll have to make some decisions on who's going to play where and come up with the lines that they're going to use rolling into the regular season.
Yeah, UMD, their game, that followed kind of the same script a little bit. Ended up winning 4-2 over Wisconsin and went up early. Well, actually not early. After it was 0-0 after the first, and then um, let's see, like his first name, Carter Loney, freshman, actually scored the first goal of the game, and then Wisconsin was able to tie it up. Loney's a freshman forward. Don't know a whole lot about him. Uh, then after that, Hunter Lillig, senior defenseman, he put UMD up 2-1, and not too much after that, Casey Gilling, a grad transfer from Miami, he came in. He's a forward, and he was able to put UMD up 3-1. Uh, Wisconsin cut it to 3-2, and then Jesse Jocks, senior forward out of Hermantown, who's been just kind of constantly moving his way up the lineup since he came in as a freshman. He scored the empty netter to get UMD the win. Used all three goalies though.
I'm pretty sure Western did not last year, because last year there wasn't a preseason. We just went straight to the pod. But the year before that, I believe they used at least two for sure. That much I do know. So I know it's not outside of conventional thinking to run, an extra goalie or two in the preseason, just to kind of get a look at, or let him get some time on and get an extra look at what they're doing and things like that. So
yeah, Ben Pat, our redshirt senior goalie, third stringer, he started the game, and then Ryan Fanti went in. Zach Stayskull finished it up, and I think it's going to be a Fanti Stayskull duo again, just like it was last year. The biggest thing, I think they wanted to get Pat some playing time against another team, just in case one goes down with an injury, and then they end up in a 5 overtime game like against North Dakota. Well, they won't until the playoffs, but they end up something in the middle of a game. Fanti or Stayskull were to get hurt when one of them's already out. Just get Pat ready to play, have a little game experience in there.
Yeah, I mean, it's always good to get a little more experience. The interesting thing on the weekend, though, I don't know if you noticed this, but with the CCHA coming back as its own conference, there were a lot of former NC or CCHA matchups in either exhibition games or in series. Like I know at one point Omaha was a member of the CCHA, and they played Lake Superior State this weekend, who's a former member of the previous CCHA and I think is a member of the new CCHA.
Mm-hmm.
Miami, I believe, played Ferris, I believe.
Yes, they did play Ferris State.
And those are two former CCHA competitors when Western was in the conference with them. And that was also a regular, or both of those games counted towards the season already. And then I think St. Cloud and St. Thomas, I believe their games were regular season games. So they missed out on the exhibition period.
Yeah, 3 out of the eight teams that were in action played regular series. Omaha and Lake Superior and Miami and Ferris State, they had similar games in which there was an overtime win by both Omaha and Miami by 3, or overtime loss, sorry, and then a 3-goal win by each team. Omaha lost 4-3 in overtime in game 1, and then beat Lake Superior 3-0 in the second. And Miami won 7-4 game 1, and then lost 4-3 in overtime to Ferris State.
Yeah, Western has Ferris State on a home series this weekend. But even Western versus Ohio State, that was a former CCHA matchup before the Big Ten kind of ruined all that the CCHA was and the WCHA to give us the NCHC, which since its inception has been the premier hockey conference. So I don't know that we should really be mad about the Big Ten anymore. But I think it was kind of cool to see some familiar schools playing once again and competing in those kind of matchups. But like I said, Western has Ferris on a home-and-home Friday nights here in Kalamazoo, and I'll be at that game, which I'm super looking forward to. It's been probably 18 months, I want to say. So I think the last game I was able to attend was March of 2020. And it was against Miami. It was the last season or series that we had fans for, because it was that next week that everything kind of hit the fan and everything started shutting down. And then we didn't have an opportunity to have fans in stands last year, even at the end of the season, like I know a couple places did. So hopefully, so it'll be interesting to see what the Lunatics do with a fresh slate and kind of missing a year of passing down tradition, because that's an arena that can be incredibly loud, incredibly distracting to play if you're not used to it, and to miss a year and to spread down chants and cheers and timing and things like that could be a slight disadvantage to the Western team. But I think getting an opportunity to see those kids play, it'll catch on quick, and there'll probably even be some people who hung around the town a little bit longer to kind of help get it going again. So, but I'm definitely looking forward to the season starting for the Broncos and to be back in that arena with 3,500 people, and a third of that being students who take up an entire side of the rink. So
I was just thinking of that earlier before we came on, and how it's going to be so much fun and getting the chance back. And kids are so creative now what they'll come up with. And I know looking at Western, how your rink is at it's Lawson, correct?
yeah,
Yeah, at Lawson, how it's structured, the volume of the student section can rain down on the ice way more than say at Amsoil. Amsoil is kind of, you get down on ice level, you're kind of behind the glass. The chance go up unless you have the student section in the upper deck. So even though it's raucous, it's not quite as a player, you're not quite hearing everything that's coming at you.
yeah, and the absolute worst places to be in that arena is in the penalty box. I've sat next to the penalty box the entire time I was a student there, and it was a mess. I mean, if you were an opposing player and you got put in the penalty box, man, was that 2 minutes was rough. And God forbid you had to serve a double minor or a major. You were not having fun for those 5 minutes at all.
You're just, if you're serving a regular one, you're just praying your team gives up a goal. You don't want them to, but
yeah, you're hoping it's at an end of the period where you can get out for a couple minutes and hope that the student section forgets that you have to be back there. But they do not make it easy on anybody.
I think every arena is going to be just raucous, though, for kids coming back excited to watch hockey, because every one of these schools, hockey is huge. It's there's no, I hate to pick on them, but like a Rutgers in football or basketball in the Big Ten, everyone's just kind of like, oh, we're an academic school. All these schools, hockey is their number one, no matter where they are, no matter how big they are, what conference they play otherwise.
Yeah, or whether the school cares to admit it or not, because there's definitely some places, and I'll tell you like straight up, I think Western's one of them who try to make football number one, but if you look at student turnout and student engagement with the actual programs, hockey by far has the best interaction of students, has the largest participation of students, and like they stay the entire game and they're actually involved, and they can pick out moments when it's acceptable to cheer a little bit louder, a little bit stronger, or kind of hold back and wait for the opportunity to then explode, and they can almost dictate the pace of the energy in the arena. But I mean, that doesn't necessarily happen at football games. Football games, for whatever reason, in college and at the pro level, it's I'm gonna go tailgate. Like that's what you hear. It's like, oh, I'm there for the tailgate, and then you either leave after the tailgate's over, or you go to half the game and then you leave at halftime because you're either sobering up or you're so hungover from being in the sun for so long that all you want to do is go take a nap. So as much as they might want to try and say, no, we're not a hockey school, they're a hockey school.
And it's the constant action. I know we both love football, even though our teams are especially pro teams are miserable to cheer for. It's not the constant action, and that's what especially student sections love. It's just constantly going, okay, there's a line change that takes 10 seconds. It never takes very long, but then it's 3-4 minutes of just back and forth, big hits, goals scored, big saves. There's always something to be excited about.
Yeah, and I think that being like you're so much further away from the action at a football game or a basketball game, but you're right on top of it at a hockey game. And it's literally you and what, a quarter inch thick glass, plexiglass, whatever, safety glass, whatever they call it. It's not very thick, I'll tell you that. Between you and the actual action on the ice, and to a point you have to pay attention to what's going on. Or if you're leaning too close to the glass and there's a big hit, you're going to get smacked in the head just like the dude on the other side was. So you pick up things by watching the game, and you get, I think when you're paying attention to the game, whether it's holding your attention because of the fast pace or not, like the more you're paying attention, the easier it is to get up for those big moments, or to know that those big moments are about ready to come. And you can feel the energy building when a team's, held the offensive zone for 3 shifts in a row, but the puck hasn't quite hit the back of the net. And then when it does, and you just hear that eruption of, in Western's case, 3,366 fans seated, and then whatever standing room is, I think we can top out at roughly 5,000. So to hear 5,000 people all cheering for the same moment it's a special feeling, and Lawson's definitely a special place, and I can't wait to get back there on Friday.
I can't wait to get back to Amsoil. It's such a beautiful arena. It's just so much fun to go to games there, especially when it's a rivalry game. North Dakota, St. Cloud, especially now. Just the atmosphere of everyone. And then if you're a college kid, you can walk across the little canal and go to Grandma's Sports Garden after.
All right, let's cut out with the cheap plugs, okay? No one's paying for this.
Hey, that's the place. One thing that did catch my attention over looking at the scores, even though it was just an exhibition game, was North Dakota and Bemidji State. North Dakota only won 2-1 over Bemidji State, and UMD has a home and home against Bemidji. They've been a little better in past years, but they're still not quite up to the level as Mankato, UMD, and St. Cloud have been as far as Minnesota schools. And I was thinking about our rankings that we did last week in North Dakota, and this, yes, it was exhibition, but it tells me a lot of where North Dakota is compared to Bemidji State and to the rest of the NCHC. I think last year North Dakota would have beat them probably 4-5-1, at least the first night, possibly the second night. But just going 2-1, I don't have faith in North Dakota being as good as some people are expecting them to be. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I don't know a lot about Bemidji, but it does seem that, when you have these exhibition matches type thing, you're kind of expecting more of almost the St. Cloud, St. Thomas score. I mean, not so much 12-2, but, a dominating performance by one side, and kind of maybe even more closer to the Sunday score of 2-0. Maybe you're not necessarily trying to put the puck in the net consistently or constantly on a team, but you're trying to work on things, and you're trying to make sure that zone entry's good, or like you're able to control the puck in the offensive zone, things of that nature, and maybe not necessarily like you'll shoot when the opportunity arises, but maybe you're kind of looking for the perfect shot as opposed to just any shot. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And North Dakota is definitely one of those schools that doesn't necessarily rebuild, they reload, or they recharge, whatever the optimum term is for when you don't want to say rebuild. But we could definitely see this being a rebuilding year for them, considering, like I think we went over last week, 50% of their team is new to UND in the program. So I think maybe shaking some of the rust off after last year and getting those new guys in there and acclimated to the system, we might see a little bit different from UND, but I can definitely see them exceeding expectations at the same time, just because they do have a track record of doing such things. But yeah, I don't really, as of this point, I think where we had them ranked seems more plausible than where NCHC people had them ranked, and maybe they seen more than we have. But
yeah, and North Dakota, they played to only win 2-1. Bemidji played all 3 of their goalies. North Dakota played Driscoll all 60 minutes. So that's a little telling too, that your offense, maybe there's not that chemistry there right now, but you're only just able to score two on three different goalies. That I would expect a little bit more, but that also is the turnover that once they get into NCHC play, they might have that chemistry once they've played together for a little while and they're able to score more and look better than we think. And I know Driscoll has been there and he has played and he's a solid goalie.
Yeah.
So that might help them a decent amount.
And we touched on it a little bit in talking about North Dakota, but St. Cloud State, man, just put a hurting on St. Thomas in St. Thomas's Division One debut, and I think they're a school who I think could have done maybe with an exhibition weekend instead of jumping right into the fire that is Division One college hockey, and especially to go up against for your first matchup. But were they a top 5 ranked team in the country? I think they were like second maybe behind UMass since they just carried
Yeah.
over from results of last year. Um, Definitely had a bit of a better outing the second night than the first night. Um, and that's just going to be kind of growing pains of making that jump too. And there was one play in particular that I think really kind of highlighted the difference in what they've seen and what they're gonna see. Which I mean, having a coach that St. Thomas does in I'm gonna butcher his name if I try to say it, but he's the former Miami coach. Um,
I will look it up so I can.
I know it and I can hear it, but my tongue won't let me say it. So
It's okay. I'm from Minnesota. I might be able to. Uh, Enrico Blasi.
yeah, he's familiar with Division One hockey. He's familiar with top tier hockey. He coached at Miami when Miami was on a tremendous run, and I think made a push late in the tournament. So he'll definitely have his players better prepared, but I think it's just the players themselves having to adjust to the speed of the game at the Division One level, and within like I said, an opponent who's already ranked in the top of the country. But there was a play, I think it was late second period behind the net, where the St. Cloud player just skated around everybody, and it took St. Thomas just couldn't get the puck away from him, and they ended up putting it in the back of the net. And it was one of those things where you're like, yep, that's the difference between those two.
I know we talked about it when it happened, and we've both seen it. A lot of it is, I think there's Division 3 players that are still on St. Thomas that they had when they were in the MIAC and dominating the MIAC, and uh, they just kind of got bumped out. Now they did have a couple years to recruit kids that would be for Division 1, but you still have the lingering players, and it's going to be, like you said, growing pains, and it's going to take some time for the Tommy faithful to get to to go through. They're going to need to let them to have time to grow and become a a competitive team. Now I think they'll do okay in their conference schedule, pretty much other than Mankato, but it honestly might not be a bad thing that they had to play St. Cloud right away. Like, hey, this is where you guys want to be. This is what you got to do. Here's what a top tier team looks like. This is what you have to do to beat them. With the 2-0 score the second night, eh, it not being able to watch it. I could have gone to the game if I wanted to. Uh, Decided not to, but I think St. Cloud was more or less working on things. They're like, okay, we killed you last night. We know we can kill you again if we just go out and play. Let's go. Let's go try work on this, work on that. Different scenarios that they want to try. Maybe play some lower line guys to get them some more playing time, get them some more experience. The newer guys uh, in the box score, it doesn't have any minutes for players, so I don't know what they did. but setting a school record with 12 goals, my goodness, that
Yeah.
even the fans. I saw some of the highlights on Twitter after because I shut it off after the first period and honestly forgot that it was on. Uh, and the students were like, "Okay, yay, you scored again. We're used to this now."
Right. I think that covers pretty much everything from last weekend. Um, I don't see. Did Colorado College play this weekend? Yes, they played Air Force.
Yes.
They lost two to
Yeah.
one to Air Force.
And that I was going to bring that one up as well. Um, I don't know how Air Force has been, but Colorado College for the team that we expect them to be, and the opening of a new arena. Yes, they lost, but that's a confidence booster in a way that, hey, we only lost 2-1. We didn't get blown out. It wasn't uncompetitive. We were right there. I think that's a boost for their team and confidence for the fans coming in and a decent start to a new arena, even though it's not officially a game.
Yeah, and Air Force is one of those schools who they're not the most high scoring schools out there, but they'll grind away and they'll outwork you from time to time. And if you let them, they'll outwork and you will lead to goals. So you definitely got to stay up on that team, and you got to make it competitive, and you got to compete with them all 60 minutes. Westerns had their ups and downs with them over the years that I've seen. And then Denver played Lindenwood, who I have no idea who they are.
They're um they're down in Missouri, I believe, and I don't know if they have an official Division 3 program or not. I did go to college with a guy who was the goalie on their main club team, and they're pretty dominant in the club hockey scene. But that was more of an exhibition game in its own right, where okay, we're gonna bring in some teams so we can work on things and just walk all over them.
Which they definitely did. 9-1. Um, and then this weekend, like I said, there's some pretty good matchups. This weekend, Western faces former CCHA rival in Ferris State at a home and home. And it's kind of, as much as I'm like, I want to go to every game that's around me, it's kind of nice when these home and home series are kind of interesting and they're kind of cool in their own right. That you get to play one game here, one game there. Um, they're definitely an experience, and it's if you can afford to do it and you want to do it, it's worth the trip to kind of see both. And I did that a couple years ago. Ferris has a very interesting home arena in that they only have fans on three sides. The way their building setup is kind of small, and their student section sits behind the home or the away goalie for the first and third period. So they're behind him 2 out of 3 periods, and not a bad atmosphere, honestly. But I'm definitely hoping that the Broncos can walk away with a sweep this weekend. Uh, Outside of that, I think the matchup I'm looking forward to kind of piecing together and catching bits and pieces where I can might actually be Arizona State versus Denver at Denver this weekend. Just because I know Arizona's new to the Division 1 scene still. I think they're less than 5 years in for sure. I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they've made the transition. I think maybe possibly the best out of anybody who's come up lately outside of maybe Penn State. The argument can be made there that the Big Ten coming along kind of helped Penn State. But Penn State also put up a pretty incredible record the year before the Big Ten took over, and they were legitimately a part of that conference. But yeah, so those would be my two series that I'm going to try and keep an eye on the most. Uh, North Dakota and Niagara is one of the other matchups, and then Minnesota Duluth and Bemidji State. Maine versus Omaha, St. Cloud State versus Minnesota State, St. Lawrence versus Colorado College. I think wrap up the weekend there.
Who does Miami play? Or are they off this weekend?
It looks like they might have an off weekend this weekend. Yeah, they do not seem to have any games, at least as far as I can see, using the NCHC website.
That St. Cloud Mankato series that's going to be a really good series. Mankato has become a power, and they're now just reloading like UMD, like St. Cloud. That should be pretty intense and fun for fans at both buildings. I've been to both arenas. They're only about an hour from me, and I will say I like Mankato's arena better than the Herb Brooks National Sports Center, but Mankato also has fans on three sides, and the student section is behind the end they shoot on twice. That's going to be rocking though. Both arenas, because I believe that's home and home. That's usually what we're doing with in-state teams that are not in the conference, and that one I'm definitely going to keep an eye on, because that's going to have bigger pictures or bigger picture implications than some of the others. Obviously, UMD Bemidji, and I think that will also give us an idea of where North Dakota ranks, even though it was exhibition, like we say. What does UMD do versus Bemidji? North Dakota did versus Bemidji. And then I think Western and Ferris State will be interesting with how they played versus Miami.
Yeah, they're two teams that know each other. I mean, granted, we've had some coach turnover on both sides, but they're very similar in the way that they're built. They're both built kind of a good mix of speed and size. We'll see kind of how the team takes effect now that Firschweiler's, the head coach for Western. He definitely knows what Ferris brings and how to play Ferris. He's played them as a player at Western and has coached against them as an associate head coach for a few seasons. So it's definitely not like they're going in blind to what Ferris can do and can be. And, Ferris is another one of those teams where not too long ago they were a top team in the country. And they have aspirations of being there again. So it should be a good matchup. It's usually a very good matchup. I think Bussy might have played them his freshman year. I'm pretty sure he did, because he's kind of been the starter since he came in. And it's a series. It's always fun to watch. Like those two teams are gonna hang and bang and try and score goals and put up a good show for 60 minutes Friday night and 60 minutes Saturday night. And depending on how Friday night goes, Saturday's game might be, a little bit harder for some people to watch. So,
and that's the thing with UMD and Bemidji State. I think it's going to be hard hitting. Bemidji State, they're usually a grinding team. They're not going to be flashy. They're not going to dazzle you with a lot of breakaways and skill plays. They're going to grind you down. They're going to hit you. And that's how UMD has been. Yes, there's some skill, but discipline, physical, try to wear you down, then put the puck in the net when you're not looking. Yeah, UMD has had some skilled players like a Scotty Perunovic at defense the last couple of years. But I think it's going to be a very hard-fought series. I don't expect it to be that high scoring, just in general. But who knows? I could be wrong.
Yeah, scoring is so hard to predict because there's sometimes where, depending on the player, if they get on a roll, it can easily get out of hand quickly, and any team in the NCHC is completely capable of putting goals up in bunches. So, um, those are always, I think, picking whether or not it's going to be a tight game or a high scoring game is always hard to determine. But I think you can always bet on the fact that it's going to be a hard game. It's going to be body on body. It's going to be pucks, fighting for pucks in corners and hoping you get the first goal on the board so that you can kind of dictate play a little better, and you're not chasing the game after that. So
They always talk about first goal being the most important, but especially once we get into conference play over the last since the NCHC has been a conference, that is more important than anything else. I think it takes on a whole new meaning within conference play.
oh, 100%. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love a good comeback, and Western's had a few doozies, but there's also been times where I've definitely seen them hold on to a 1 goal lead and fight and claw and fight the whole game just because they have a 1 goal lead, and the other team's pushing them a little bit harder than, if say it's like 4-1 or 4-0, you kind of look seeing players sit back a little bit more than they should, and then the game gets tight at the end, and then you're pushing again, and you might not have that gear left anymore because you sat back too hard and didn't fight through that adrenaline dump the way you wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
All right. They do have. I don't know if you want to talk about this or look at them, but since this was a week that had standing counting games, we do have Players of the Week on the NCHC website, and I know that was something we wanted to potentially incorporate into our show and talk about and see if we agreed with or disagreed with. Which I don't know that we're gonna really argue too much this week, just because some games were hard to follow or hard to see, and it was kind of a limited number of picks because I don't think they took exhibition games into effect or account.
Right. It doesn't look like they did.
Which, I mean, I'm completely fine with. I mean, that seems to make sense that you would want games that counted to dictate more so than exhibition games.
Yeah, you don't want to just exhibition say, yeah, okay, you can count. No, you need to play the real the real thing for it to count. So it looks like forward of the week is Zach Okabe for St. Cloud State, defenseman Derek Drashke from Miami. Isaiah Seville is the goaltender of the week from Omaha, and rookie of the week is Mason Salmquist from St. Cloud State. Don't think you can argue either of the St. Cloud players just because of the number of points they put up. 14 goals in 2 games. Miami for being still kind of a younger team, getting a win and then losing to Ferris State 4-3. Not bad that a defenseman came out of that. Trying to look at the recap, and then Omaha getting a win in an overtime loss to Lake Superior. He ended up getting a shutout in game 2. 15 saves in game 1. 195 goals against for the weekend and 907 save percentage. I'd say that's a pretty solid week for a goaltender.
Oh, for sure. And his penalty kill went 9 for 9 on the season or on the series. I mean, granted, 9 penalties over 2 games is not terrible, but you definitely want those numbers down a little bit more, I think.
And he, I'm sure, had a big part to play in that. You typically want maybe for a series 4 penalties total. If you hit 5, okay, maybe something happened. But definitely don't want to be on the PK 9 times in a series, because that's 4 times one game, 5 in the other.
Yeah.
Going to be tough to win when you're on the PK that much. Yet they were able to pull it out at least one.
And I mean, it's gonna be. I think these first few episodes are gonna be kind of just what they are until we get into a groove of the season, which might take a couple weeks because I know Western, like I said, has Ferris this week. Then they have an off week, and then they go. They have another home and home series with that time with Michigan, who we'll talk about when as we get closer to that matchup coming. Miami will play Michigan State that same weekend, so we'll kind of dive into hockey around the Great Lakes when we get there. But yeah, it's gonna be piecing it together, and then like I said, once we get an actual opportunity to either see these games in person or see some of them on TV, because I think Western has 2 away games with Colgate that will be on TV that I'm gonna watch for sure. And as we get rolling into the season, we'll have a little bit more to talk about. I think the teams are still kind of unknown both to us and to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the weekend that Western has off, UMD has the icebreaker tournament that was supposed to happen last year, but they play Michigan in the first game, and then they either play Mankato or Providence as the winners. So that'll be a fun tournament for the weekend that you have off, and then UMD doesn't take a break until Halloween, basically, because they have the Gophers after the icebreaker, and then week off, and then you and I are gonna have a fight because it's Bulldog Bronco weekend.
That's honestly one of my favorite weekends. Those are 2 teams. Those games are always so freaking good. I think there's been a couple times where I know at least once for sure that it's come down to like the final 10 seconds either Western has tied it or they scored some stupid goal from a ridiculous angle to steal a game in the last 10 seconds, and they're incredible games. I love going to Western UMD games.
And it's going to be fun. I probably won't be able to be there, but I know I'll be able to watch it on TV because I will be deer hunting and at my parents' house, and we get Bulldog games on TV, so I will definitely be watching that weekend.
Anything else that we want to cover, discuss, talk about?
Don't think there is a whole lot else that went on the conference this week. So I don't have anything else.
All right. I guess the only thing left to do then is to thank the people who listened to or watched episode 1. To thank the people who happen upon this one and stick it out through the end. It's still a learning process. I think we're feeling a groove and getting more comfortable having the cameras on. It's not like talking amongst ourselves is something too difficult, but the arena in which we're talking to each other is a little bit different, and getting used to that. If there is anything that anybody out there in the world of the internet wants to know about NCHC wise or even us, there's a few places that they can let us know in the comment section on YouTube when this video goes up, on either of our personal Twitter handles. Mine's at Painted Bronco. Yours is at Maro04.
Correct.
And then there's the page Twitter, which I will spell out this time, even though it is a pain in the butt. But, it is what it is.
Spelling's hard.
Well, especially when you're given a limited number of things that you're allowed to use. So it is at Goal Horns Fight Song, GOALHRNFIGHTSNG is the Twitter handle. And those will all be in the description when this hits YouTube, hopefully Wednesday morning. That's what I'm hoping for. It might get out Tuesday night, but we're going to shoot for Wednesday morning. I guess other than that, let's hope for some good games this weekend. Hope to come out with some wins. As a conference, I'd kind of like to see an undefeated streak start. Since none of us are playing each other, why not let the whole conference go 2-0 in the first weekend? After that, then somebody can start losing, as long as it's not the Broncos, because
Yeah, you can finish dead last. That's fine.
Nah.
I'm not going to complain.
Nah. They can be Miami. Everybody hates Ohio, so they can do it. So yeah, I guess until then, we'll catch you later.
Have a good night.